On the Ayrshire coast, there's a cafe where the same Italian family has been making ice cream since 1935. Same building, same long marble counter, same recipe carried over from a village in Tuscany more than a century ago. The world outside changed completely. But the people who run it never saw a reason to change a thing. And along this coastline, that's not the exception. It's the rule. Step into a version of Scotland where the great British seaside holiday never actually ended, where painted promenades still face the grey water of the Firth of Clyde, where the chip shop closes when the light goes, where children still hire bikes by the hour and pensioners still take their tea in glass-fronted shelters built before the war, where somehow the calendar quietly stopped somewhere around 1965 and nobody minded. These aren't museums. Nobody roped them off. People live here. They holiday here. Some of them grew up here, left for the city, and came straight back. And today, I'm going to take you to 10 of them, counting down to the one town that, more than anywhere else in Scotland, still feels exactly like a holiday from 60 years ago. Before we begin, if you love the Britain that's quietly slipping away, the corner shops and the tide tables and the bandstands that somehow survived, then do me a small favor and subscribe. This channel is one long love letter to the places time forgot, and there's a new one every week, now. Let's go to the coast, starting at number 10. Number 10, Eyemouth, Scottish borders. We begin right down in the southeast corner of the country, on the Berwickshire coast, in a town that has never once pretended to be anything other than what it is, Eyemouth. This is a working fishing port, and it has been one for an astonishingly long time. Fishing is recorded here as far back as 1298. Walk down to the harbour on any morning and the boats are still going out, the gulls are still screaming over the catch, and the air still smells of salt and diesel and the sea. There's no marina full of pleasure yachts here. The harbour does the same job it has always done. What makes Eyemouth feel like a holiday from another era is that it never sanded down its own edges. The narrow lanes behind the harbour, the smuggling history written into the old houses, the fish and chip suppers eaten on the harbour wall. It's the seaside as it was before anyone thought to make it slick. But there's a sadness woven through this town too, and the locals never forget it. On one night in October 1881, a sudden ferocious storm took 189 fishermen from this coast, 129 of them from Eyemouth alone. In a town this size, almost every family lost someone. They still call it Black Friday. And maybe that's part of why Eyemouth holds on so tightly to what it is. When the sea has taken that much from you, you don't take the old ways lightly. If Eyemouth survived by staying a working town, our next stop survived by becoming the playground of an entire city. Number 9, Rothesay, Isle of Bute. Step off the ferry at Rothesay on the Isle of Bute, and you step into the ghost of Scotland's golden age of seaside holidays. For the Victorians and Edwardians of Glasgow, this was the place. You went Doon the water down the river by paddle steamer, and you spent your one precious week of the year right here. Between the 1830s and the mid-1900s, Rothesay was one of the most popular resorts in all of Scotland, and the bones of that golden age are still everywhere you look. The crown jewel is the Winter Garden, built in 1924, a beautiful glass and iron pavilion where the holidaymakers once watched variety shows and music hall acts. There are the ornate Victorian toilets at the pier, genuinely listed, genuinely magnificent, and yes, still in use. There's the seafront curve of grand old buildings facing the water, a little faded now, but unmistakably built for an age when this was where everyone wanted to be. That's the thing about Rothesay. It had its heyday, and the crowds eventually drifted to Spain and the package holiday. But instead of erasing the old resort, the town simply kept it. So when you walk the front today, you're not looking at a recreation of a 1960s holiday. You're walking through the real thing, weathered but still standing. And speaking of real things that refuse to modernize, our next town has turned staying still into an art form. At number 8, Girvan, South Ayrshire, 645 to 915. Further down the Ayrshire coast sits Girvan, a harbour town that became a municipal burgh by charter back in 1668, though the harbour is older still. Girvan was built for two things, fishing and the holidaymaker. In the Victorian and Edwardian years, people came here for the healthy sea air, for the long walks along the shore, for the simple pleasure of being beside the sea. And remarkably little of that simple pleasure has been taken away. There's the long stretch of beach, there's the harbour where the boats still tie up, and out in the water sits Ailsa Craig, that great dome of a rock rising straight out of the Firth of Clyde, the source of the granite used to make almost every curling stone in the world. It sits on the horizon like it's posing for a postcard from 1962. What you don't find in Girvan is the modern seaside machine. No vast chain developments along the front, no glass and steel apartment blocks crowding out the view. It's the kind of town where you buy an ice cream, walk the prom, look out at the rock, and feel the decades fall away. But if Girvan kept the past by accident, our next town keeps it almost stubbornly, on an island where they decided long ago that some things were better left alone. Number 7. Millport, Isle of Cumbrae. To reach Millport, you take a short ferry to the little island of Great Cumbrae, and the moment your feet hit the road, something wonderful happens. You slow down, because here the great tradition is the bicycle. Millport is famous for one thing above all, hiring a bike and cycling the 10-mile loop around the entire island. Families have been doing it for generations, parents who did it as children now bringing children of their own. There are shops here with hundreds of bikes, tandems, trikes, the lot, and on a sunny day the whole front fills with wobbling families pedaling off around the shore, exactly as they did 50 and 60 years ago. The town itself curves around the bay in a row of painted houses, with a tiny cathedral, said to be the smallest in Britain, tucked just up the hill. There's an ice cream shop, a putting green, rock pools, and the kind of crazy golf and bucket and spade simplicity that the modern holiday forgot how to make. Nothing here is trying to dazzle you. There's no thrill ride, no light show, no app. There's a bike, a bay, an ice cream, and an entire afternoon stretching out in front of you. For a great many Scots, Millport is their childhood. And the astonishing thing is that you can go back tomorrow and find it almost exactly as you left it. From the smallest island, we go now to a town that gave Scotland's seaside its most famous flavor. Number 6, Largs, North Ayrshire. Largs is the home of the cafe I told you about at the very start, Nardini's. The Nardini family came to Scotland from the town of Barga in Tuscany in the late 1800s, and in 1935 they moved to Largs and opened a grand Art Deco cafe and ice cream parlor right on the seafront. And here is the remarkable part. It's still there, still run with that same family name over the door, still serving ice cream from that long gleaming counter with the same sweeping curved frontage looking out over the water. To sit in Nardini's with a Knickerbocker glory in front of you is to sit inside a perfectly preserved moment of the British seaside. The booths, the glass, the light coming off the Firth. It is 1955, 1965, any year you like, and it has barely moved. But Largs is more than its cafe. There's the long promenade, the pencil-shaped pencil monument out on the point marking the Battle of Largs, and the ferries slipping out to the islands. And every autumn the town fills up for the Largs Viking Festival when it leans straight into its own history. It's a proper, old-fashioned day trip town, the kind of place a Glasgow family would pile into the car for, and the kind of place they still do. Now we leave the west coast entirely and cross the country to a beach right on the edge of the capital. Number 5, Portobello, Edinburgh. Most people don't realize Scotland's capital has a proper seaside resort sitting on its doorstep, but it does, and it has had one for a very long time. Portobello. Just a few miles from the center of Edinburgh, Portobello has a glorious 2-mile-long sandy beach and a wide Victorian promenade that was built when this was a fashionable bathing resort in its own right. In the 1800s, Edinburgh society came down here to take the sea air, and by the 20th century, the prom was packed in summer with deck chairs and ice cream and bathers. What's lovely about Portobello today is that it has all come round again, but in the most gentle, unhurried way. The Victorian and Edwardian villas still line the front. There are old-fashioned amusement arcades and ice cream parlors that have been there for generations. There are even working Turkish baths, a genuine survivor from the Victorian age, still steaming away. On a bright weekend, the prom fills with families, the swimmers brave the cold water, and the whole scene could be lifted straight out of a 1960s postcard, except it's real, it's living, and it's a short bus ride from Prince's Street. Now we head north to a town that built itself the most defiant little monument to the seaside you'll ever see. Number 4, Stonehaven, Aberdeenshire. On the northeast coast, south of Aberdeen, sits Stonehaven, a handsome old harbour town with one truly extraordinary survivor. In 1933, the people of the town voted for it, and in 1934, they got it, an enormous open-air swimming pool right beside the sea, not just any pool. Stonehaven open-air pool is the only Art Deco Olympic-sized saltwater lido left in Britain. 55 yards of heated seawater, filled straight from the North Sea, with the white curving walls of the 1930s still gleaming around it. Think about that for a moment. While almost every other open-air lido in Britain was bulldozed in the 70s and 80s, Stonehaven kept theirs. They fought for it. And on a summer evening, they still hold midnight swims. the steam rising off the heated water under the dark northern sky, exactly as people did when it first opened nearly 90 years ago. The town around it matches the mood, the old harbor, the boats, the war memorial up on the hill, the famous fireball ceremony that lights up the streets every hogmanay. Stonehaven never threw away its past. It heated it up and went swimming in it. We're almost at the top 3 now. But first, I want to hear from you. Tell me in the comments, which Scottish seaside town did your family go to when you were a child? The one with the ice cream you still remember, the beach you can still picture, the day that somehow lasted forever. Drop the name below. I read every single one, and I promise you're going to find 100 other people sharing the very same memory. Now, the top 3. Number 3, North Berwick, East Lothian. Just east of Edinburgh lies a town they once called the Biarritz of the North, North Berwick. It became a fashionable holiday resort in the 19th century thanks to its 2 beautiful sandy bays, and the look of that era is still everywhere. The elegant seafront houses, the little harbor, the small town high street that has resisted being swallowed by the chains. The first golf course here was founded back in 1832, and golf and the gentle seaside holiday have been the heart of the town ever since. What gives North Berwick its timeless feel is the sheer unhurried decency of the place. Children crab off the harbor wall with a bucket and a line, exactly as their grandparents did. There's a tidal swimming spot, an open-air pool's worth of rock pools, and the great volcanic plug of the Bass Rock sitting out in the Firth, white with thousands of gannets. It is a town that has had every chance to turn itself into something flashier and has politely declined. It simply remained a proper, well-loved seaside town. And that is exactly why a day here feels like a day from 60 years ago. From the East Coast, we go back west now to the grand old lady of the Clyde. Number 2, Dunoon, Argyll. Across the water from Gourock on the Cowal Peninsula sits Dunoon, and few places carry the spirit of the old Clyde holiday quite like it. The first pier here appeared in 1835, and it was enlarged in 1867 to cope with the sheer volume of paddle steamers bringing holidaymakers down the water from Glasgow. This was the engine room of the great Scottish seaside escape, boatload after boatload of city families pouring off the steamers for their week beside the sea, and the bones of all that are still here. The grand Victorian villas climbing the hillside, the seafront, the statue of Highland Mary, Robert Burns's sweetheart looking out over the water. Every August the town fills for the Cowal Highland Gathering, one of the biggest Highland games in the world, the streets thick with pipe bands and tartan. Dunoon has faded from its absolute peak, like so many of these towns, but it never tore down its identity. Stand on the front, watch the ferry come in across the grey-blue Clyde, and you are standing exactly where generations of Scots began the best week of their year. And that brings us, finally, to number 1. Number 1, AYR, South Ayrshire. There could only really be one town at the top of this list, Ayr. This is the grand old king of the Scottish seaside. Ever since the railway arrived in 1840, Ayr has been the holiday resort of the southwest. A place built around a long, golden, sweeping beach, a fine esplanade for the evening stroll, and the kind of seafront that was designed from the very start to make a holiday feel like a holiday. And Ayr leans into it. This is the town that was home to Butlins, opened in 1946, the great cathedral of the post-war British holiday camp, where families came for redcoats and ballrooms and a week of organized fun. That era of the package holiday camp, and the very heart of the 1950s and 60s British seaside, was lived out right here. But beyond the holiday camp history, Ayr is simply a complete seaside town that never lost its purpose. The beach still stretches for miles, the esplanade still fills on a sunny day. The ice cream shops, the amusements, the harbor, the race course, the connection to Robert Burns, who was born just up the road in Alloway, it all adds up to a town that knows exactly what it is and has never once been ashamed of it. To walk the front at Ayr on a bright, blowy afternoon with the sand running out toward the sea and the Isle of Arran blue on the horizon is to walk through the living memory of the great British seaside holiday. It didn't end here. It just kept going. And that is why Ayr is number 1. So there they are. 10 Scottish seaside towns where the 1960s never quite let go. Eyemouth, Rothesay, Girvan, Millport, Largs, Portobello, Stonehaven, North Berwick, Dunoon, and Ayr. And here's what struck me, putting this list together. None of these towns survived by accident. The people of Stonehaven voted to build their Lido and then fought to keep it. The Nardini family chose to keep that counter exactly as it was. Millport decided that a bike and a bay were enough. These places didn't get left behind by the modern world. In a quiet, stubborn, very Scottish way, they looked at what the modern world was offering And they said, "No, thank you. We'll keep what we've got." If this took you back, if you found your town on this list or wished you had, then go and watch our journey through the towns of England that still feel like a 1960s holiday, or our trip around the Scottish castles where people genuinely still live inside. I think you'll love them. Thank you for spending this time beside the sea with me. Tell me your favorite in the comments, subscribe if you haven't yet, and I'll see you on the next stretch of coast.